In the spring of 1944, hundreds of thousands of German soldiers captured by Allied forces found themselves shipped across the Atlantic and interned in the United States. What might surprise many Americans today is how few of those men attempted dramatic escapes, and how many instead agreed to work in U.S. farms, factories, and camps. Understanding the story of why so many German POWs chose to work rather than to escape requires us to look beyond imprisonment and into a mix of practical realities, psychological factors, and wartime context. According to multiple studies, the U.S. handled approximately 380,000 German prisoners of war during World War II. When the War Manpower Commission directed that every employable prisoner of war in the United States will be worked on essential work, which would have to be done whether or not there were any prisoners of war, the expectation was clear. The U.S. needed labor, and captivity offered it. At first glance, it may seem odd. Why would enemy soldiers opt for manual labor rather than freedom? First, the U.S. camps were, relative to many frontline conditions, humane and stable. In states like Michigan, the POWs were employed in orchard picking, forest pulp woodcutting, earning about 80 cents per day, for example. Within the rigid structure of wartime captivity, many prisoners found that cooperating with camp labor brought modest material rewards. Wages placed into trust accounts, the ability to buy small comforts in camp stores, and less daily uncertainty than being idle. Moreover, the possibility of escape in the American interior was far more daunting than many might imagine. The camps were spread across remote locations, guarded and surrounded by unfamiliar terrain and language. For a German soldier in rural Michigan or Colorado, fleeing meant navigating thousands of miles, often through snow or wilderness, without local contacts, in an alien land. Research at camps such as the large base camp in southern Colorado, where more than 3,000 German POWs were held between 1943 and 1946, documents the logistical improbability of meaningful escape. Psychology also played a role. Having been captured and transported across the ocean, many POWs accepted the fact of their detention and gravitated toward making the best of their situation. Some prisoners believed the U.S. would treat them reasonably under the International Committee of the Red Cross's oversight, and compared that to horror stories of Soviet camps, which induced a better to accept this than face worse mentality. In Michigan, the archivists noted that there were very few escape attempts reported. The German POWs had heard rumors of the horrible conditions in Russian POW camps. Another element was ideological and generational. As the war dragged on and the German army suffered defeat after defeat, the morale of many capturees was low. For some, the incentive to risk everything on an escape attempt was diminished. The U.S. program also actively included re-education efforts, teaching English, U.S. geography, civic ideals, and the benefits of democracy and capitalism. Some scholars argue that offering German POWs meaningful educational opportunities created an environment where working felt not just like servitude, but something potentially constructive. This doesn't mean all prisoners embraced conversion to American values, but the psychological impact of being treated less harshly than anticipated was real. On the labor front, the sheer demand for workforce in the wartime American economy helped make the arrangement tolerable. With many American men overseas, U.S. agriculture and industry faced labor shortages. The War Department recognized that essential work would have to be done whether or not there were any prisoners of war. German POWs thus filled real gaps on farms, in forests, sometimes in camps dismantling surplus equipment or doing salvage work. Accepting the labor role meant staying alive, avoiding idle frustration, and sometimes gaining modest agency inside the camp system. As one study notes, compensation for German enlisted prisoners in the U.S. included 100 cents a day plus an additional 700 cents per day for any work above and beyond their required maintenance of the prison camp. The practical benefits added up. Camps often provided regular meals, medical care, and predictable routines, conditions far better than many frontline soldiers expected or what they feared for if captured by the Soviets. The notion of escape lost much of its appeal when weighed against the risks, being shot, recaptured, ending up in a harsher camp, or simply failing and returning in disgrace. Escaping into the interior of the U.S. meant confronting a dominant, foreign culture, terrain, and language without friendly contact. A handful of cases did occur, but they were the exception. In Alabama's Camp Aliceville, for example, one small group of 6 prisoners did steal a car and travel deep into Tennessee, yet they were quickly apprehended. From the U.S. perspective, employing POW labor was cost-effective, humane by the standards of the day and Geneva Convention obligations, and prevented idleness, which in turn reduced escape attempts and unrest. Since the German POWs were constitutionally enemy combatants, but also protected persons under international law, the U.S. had an interest in maintaining decent conditions. Some historians argue these conditions created mutual respect between guards and prisoners that further dampened incentive for violent or risky escape. Yet there were layers of complexity. Not all German POWs eagerly worked. Some resisted through silent refusals, doing minimal work or organizing passive protests. Others were ideologically committed to Nazism and viewed labor for the U.S. as betrayal. These were often segregated into separate compounds. Some experts note that working did not necessarily equal collaboration. Participation was regulated, compensated, and voluntary within the scope of camp discipline. Another point, for many captured soldiers, repatriation was a hope more appealing than escape. Having survived capture, they knew the war would end soon. Working may have seemed the safest path to return home with minimal additional suffering. Researchers note that after the war, many former prisoners kept in touch with their American employers or even settled in the U.S. Some former prisoners wrote letters to camp-employing farmers after returning to Germany. It is also worth recognizing that the labor system was not devoid of authoritarian restraint. Though better than many European camps, American POW camps still imposed restrictions: curfews, barracks, fences, guards, internal discipline. The choice to work instead of escape was made within a bounded freedom, very different from civilian life. When we say they chose to work, we are speaking within the confines of captivity. As one thesis puts it, the educational program aimed to teach German prisoners what it meant to be an American free man, an explicit ideological dimension. In the bigger picture, the decision of German POWs to work rather than try for dramatic escape tells us something about human behavior under constraint. When the risk of failure is high, when the alternative is bleak, and when cooperation offers relative stability, people will often opt for the less sensational path. In this case, the U.S. labor program made that less sensational path the most rational one. In the broader story of World War II captivity, then, the narrative is not simply one of defiance and escape. It includes adaptation, negotiation, and deferred hope. And for Americans today watching old footage of German POWs in U.S. orchards or factories, the story is a reminder that even in war, there were channels of quiet pragmatism and human survival. This is a historical account based on available research. For individual legal or ethical analysis, please consult professional historians. And that's something worth remembering when you next think about what captivity, work, and freedom really mean.